This timer starting. Good evening, everyone, at the webinar on drag racing. Thank you all for joining. I am Dhruv, your host for the day. We have Hemanth Muddappa, who is 7 times national drag racing champion and a legend of drag racing, and Vineet Taneja, who's category head premium segment marketing from MotoCorp, joining us today. Today is an opportunity for all of you who are on the way to develop the game to ask the champion himself what exactly is drag racing. And he will also share his insights, which we believe will help you understand the game better so that you can bring the real world experience into the virtual as close as possible. We'll start with the discussion on drag racing, which will be followed by the Q&A session in the end. So would request all the participants who are joining us to share your questions with us in the chat box, and we'll ask Hemanth in the end to answer those. I'll request Vineet to take over and start the webinar.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm really thrilled to be here, Dhruv. And I understand we have a very large number of registrations for this challenge, which is where we thought that we'll bring in the champion himself to tell everyone what is drag racing. Let me assure you, we are very excited to look at the results after the challenge is over. Really keen to look at that. And I now welcome Hemanth. So, Hemanth, let me start. And to start with, at the very basic, what is drag racing, if you can elaborate for our audience?
Hi, good evening, Vineet. Hi, everyone in the audience. So, drag racing is basically a form of motorsport. It is one of the shortest form of motorsport. So, in layman's terms, you call it a quarter mile rush. So, quarter mile being 402 meters, which is the length of the racetrack. And in very short words, drag racing is finishing the 402 meters in the quickest possible time. So that is what drag racing is, if you had to put it in a very short way. But to elaborate the whole sport as in detail to help you develop the game, the racetrack is 2 lanes, and both the motorcycles go on. One goes on the left and one goes on the right, and you have a start line and you have a finish line at the end of 402 meters. And at the start line you have a light which signals you to go, and I'll explain that in a few minutes. And the whole drag racing arena basically is, like I said, it's 2 tracks divided by cones in the center, which divides both the riders who go off at the same time. And on their left and on their right, basically it's a concrete wall to prevent any audience or spectators or anything coming into the track. So on either side you have row and stands of seating available for spectators down the whole entire 400 meters. And at the end of the finish line, at the end of 400 meters, is the braking area, where you obviously your time stops, because the aim of the sport is to finish 402 meters in the quickest possible time. Now coming to the motorcyclists who line up at the start line. So when they come to the start line, obviously it is a very short track, so you need to, like I said, finish it in the quickest possible time. So something that every rider, every drag racer does prior to reaching the start line is doing a burnout, which is nothing but heating up his rear tire to attain the optimal temperature, basically a higher temperature. So basically, higher the temperature in the rear tire, it gives more grip, because rubber performs when it is more sticky. So basically you need traction. So if most of you know what traction is. If you don't know, traction is nothing but the grip the tire offers you. So basically it's the stickiness between the tire and the tarmac, your racing surface. So the better the grip, the better the acceleration, the better the power from the engine is put down onto the track. So every rider mandatorily does a burnout, which is nothing but spinning the back wheel. So if you are developing a game and your rider lines up before the start line, you can include a feature in the game to do a burnout. And the next is prior to the burnout, post the burnout, he comes to the start line. So basically at the start line, to explain the technical part of it, there are laser beams, which when you line up at the start line, the laser beam is cut. So when that beam is cut, your start light system, basically I'll explain that to you. So basically a start light system, there's one for the left and one for the right on a pillared stand, and the light consists of a stage light. That light comes on when your front wheel of the motorcycle cuts the laser beam, which I told you is at the start. Once that comes on, there are four lights below that. That is three amber and a green. And sorry, there's a red light at the end of it. So let me explain the sequence of the light. So basically, when the rider lines up to the start line and he cuts the laser beam, the stage light comes on. So once the stage light comes on for the left track rider, and the right track rider, the lights are ready to go. So within 5 seconds, the amber lights start going. So amber 1, amber 2, amber 3, and then the green. So it's a very short interval. So as soon as the green light comes on, is your signal to go, because that is when the timer starts ticking. And the aim of the sport is to finish the 402 meters in the quickest possible time. So you don't want to waste any time as soon as the green light comes on. So, but you don't want to be too hasty in jumping the green light. So if you, before the green light pops up, if you by chance go move, that is, give accelerator and release the clutch, you are triggering a jump start, which, so basically the red light immediately flashes up. So it tells you immediately you have jump started, and your timing is considered invalid, and the timing system is not going to give you a time. So you have messed up your run. And yeah, this is about the Christmas light. It's called a Christmas tree. In the drag racing world, the start lights are called a Christmas tree because of, like I told you, there's a white stage light, there are three amber lights, there is a green light and a red light, and it looks like a Christmas tree because I told you it's on a pillar with lights on either sides for the left rider and the right rider. Now the next thing is, as soon as the green light comes on, the rider goes down the drag strip, and there's a laser beam at the end of 402 meters, which as soon as the front wheel cuts that beam is when the timer is stopped, and then your time is given to you. And obviously the fastest wins. And post the finish line, you have generally the track specifications is another 400 meters of braking distance, which should be sufficient for any rider to brake. And then post the finish line, you have a track for you to come back to your pit lane or to the start line for another run. It is not on the main track, it is beside. So that is the service road. And so when you're developing a game, probably when you finish the 400 meters and you brake, you take a turn and come back into the service road, and you come back again to start, or you go back to your pit. So this is so I covered, the sport, the fastest time wins, and about the burnout, heating the tire, and the Christmas tree, the braking area. Now when developing a game, you would like I said, you would want two lanes for both the riders, which are separated by cones in the center and concrete walls on the side, and then the service road is on the right, and then you have the spectator stands on the right and also on the left. And all the riders who are riding motorcycles, uh, they are wearing leather suits, and they are wearing boots, riding boots, gloves, and a helmet. This is mandatory when like any form of motorcycle racing. So this is mandatory, like the sporting regulations need. So I think this would cover everything on drag racing and help you understand how the layout for the game could be.
Superb. I think there are already questions popping up from the audience, and I'll request audience to keep sending their questions, because towards the end we'll have a Q&A, and I'll try to ask as many questions as possible to Hemant so that he answers directly. Well, Hemant, I remember last week, I had an audacity to drag race with you on Extreme 160R, and you, of course, beat me by a great margin. I was not to be seen in your rear view mirror, I guess. So you told a very important aspect at that time. You said there are three important factors in the drag racing: the man, the machine, and the environment. So why don't you start with what about the man? What are the skills that are required for drag racing? And of course, anything else that covers the aspect of the man.
Okay, so definitely the man is the most important thing on any machine, let it be car, let it be motorcycle. There's, you engineering world is so vast and so big. You can make the most powerful machine, but then there has to be a nut riding it or driving it. So, man is one of the most important things, along with the fast bike. So, there are many things that needs. To be covered when it comes to man. So I will start with a man, basically the general fitness that anyone would require to handle a powerful motorcycle or any motorcycle for that fact. See, motorsport itself is a very fitness demanding sport, and it is not about having muscles or anything like that. It is just about generally being strong enough to handle the motorcycle, handle the power, handle the horsepower that your machine is putting out. And so when I don't know how you could incorporate this into a game, but definitely I am a gamer from my childhood, and there is obviously I know that you are going to have a control for the accelerator and have a control for the clutch release. So because we are a motorcycle, you're making a motorcycle game, like in the real world of sport. Like the real on the drag strip, hand and eye coordination is something that is very, very important because obviously many of you are motorcycle riders, so everyone knows that you have to give accelerator and release the clutch simultaneously, and you are challenged by a clock which is clocking you, and you're trying to beat the fastest time, and you are focusing on the green light and when it's coming on and not wasting any time as soon as the green light comes on. So your hand eye coordination needs to be on point. So when you are making a game, the moment the you game user gives the accelerator, I think that will be with a thumb or any which way. You game designers have various methods, and releases the clutch when the green light comes on, also is like the real world sport where hand-eye coordination comes into play. So it is nothing but physically doing it and doing it on a mobile screen or a laptop, whichever platform you are building the game for. So hand-eye coordination is something very important. Next is reflexes. Basically reflexes also, it's the reflex to how fast you react after seeing the light, which also comes under hand-eye coordination. But that is not the only place you need reflexes. So it is not as simple as you see the perfect race winning runs are generally perfect, but it takes a lot of time, effort, patience, and practice to get a perfect run. So reflexes is something where anything can happen on the racetrack. It's motorsport. That is why they say motorsport is dangerous. So probably if you release the clutch too soon with too much accelerator, your bike may wheelie. So that is not something you want to do. But then you should have the reflexes to control the wheelie. If the bike is going out of your control, you need to either hit the back brake with your leg or either pull the clutch in again to drop the bike down. Or sometimes your track is always not the best condition, so probably you have a bit of mud or a bit of sand dust, or probably the power that was delivered to the rear wheel was too much and you start getting wheel spin. So there are many things that can happen when you are racing. So you should be mentally aware of these things, and your reflexes should be so good that your brain signals your body to react accordingly. So it is not only a physical sport, but it is a very big mental sport as well, any form of motorsport. And drag racing being the shortest form, there is no room for error. There is no time for you to correct those mistakes. So if you make a mistake, you are probably not going to make the time, because this is a time bound sport where you are trying to beat the fastest time at quarter mile. So probably your reflexes have to be so on point where you make sure the bike is totally under your control. And next coming is adaptability. So you have to adapt to the situation. Like I said, everything is not going to go as per your plan. You need to adapt to every single thing that is thrown at you. So if I give a live real world example. Last week at the Valley Run, when I raced my motorcycle, the track was very dusty. So I was getting a lot of wheel spin. So I, at the start, and I was losing time. So that was definitely that is, I cannot ride the same way. So I have to adapt to the track conditions and the situation, where I changed my aggressive riding style to a bit mellow, which end of the day helped me a lot, and the adaptability helped me achieve the track record. So at when developing a game, probably you cannot always have the same conditions. Probably to spice up the game, you can make different tricky and track conditions. Probably some tracks are a bit bumpy, and some tracks are a bit dusty due to the environment, because it's not something that you go and put dust on the track. It's something that is out of one's control. So adaptability is something that matters a lot. And then next, I would say strength is something that is very important, because you should be able to maneuver the bike, you should be able to handle the bike. And generally, a rider at the drag start wants to get the maximum acceleration. So the maximum acceleration is achieved by going off the line the fastest, and we have the Extreme 160R, which is very helpful in that way. But then the man has to also make sure he's putting his weight on the front to make sure the bike doesn't lift up. So strength is something. And also, when you are doing high speeds down the straight, you're going to clock your fastest possible speed. So you need to be able to hold on to the bike and be strong. And the next is, uh, aerodynamics plays a very big sport in a very big role in motorsport. So when you're riding a motorcycle, you don't want to be sitting upright, because air is going to hit into you and obstruct the aerodynamics. So the rider and the motorcycle needs to become one. So that is why you see most motorcycle racers ducking down, and improving the aerodynamic efficiency by reducing the obstruction of air. So basically, the assisting the airflow by ducking down. So when you are making the game, when you launch, you are a bit up, but then as soon as you go off the line, you are ducking down. So you're, like I said, aerodynamically assisting the bike. And next is, like I said, mental aspect. So basically, even when you're playing a game, you need to be looking at the green light when it's coming on and reacting at the correct time by releasing the clutch and giving throttle. So yeah, all this should cover the rider aspect of drag racing, Vineet.
Perfect. And when we say man, man is just a way of saying it can be a woman also.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
basically the
We
person,
a lot of
right?
women in motorsport now, and we want to encourage them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's perfect. I think you clarified it very well. In another instance, I'll just give you an example. When I was again attempting a drag race at one of our test tracks in CIT, Jaipur, it actually took off. The bike took off kind of a wheelie for microseconds, probably because we were not putting that weight up, on the front, like you said. Great. So I'm not just moving to the second factor, which is the environment. How does the environment impact the drag racing? I know you mentioned about the dusty environment at India Bike Week, but what else are there, the parameters which impact in the environment to the drag racing?
Yeah, Vinit. So environment plays a very big role in drag racing, so or in any form of motorsport, for that matter. And I would classify it. I think probably into four major factors. One being altitude. So we all know that altitude is nothing but the height above the sea level, and as we go higher above sea level, the oxygen content in the air is lesser than what you are at sea level. So at sea level, you have the highest oxygen concentration in the air. So how does this matter in with a motorcycle? For those who don't know, oxygen is a combustible gas. So when it enters the air chamber with the petrol and the combustion chamber in the bike's engine, it is going to produce more combustion because of more oxygen. So basically, in layman, in to say it in simple words, you have higher horsepower in a bike which is running at lower altitudes. So if you have a racetrack, probably in say Chennai is almost sea level, just 30 meters The Chennai racetrack is just 30 meters above sea level. So you have the highest concentration of oxygen in the air. So your bike is producing the highest horsepower. So the bike with the highest horsepower has the highest chances of going faster, provided the man and everything else is in place. So your bike is producing higher horsepower than a bike the same bike at a racetrack at a higher altitude. So probably in the game you can have different racetracks, and you cannot clock always the same timing at every racetrack. Even if you put a robot onto the bike, and you know so basically the altitude plays a big role. So different racetracks. So racetracks at lower altitude give you better timing for drag racing or any racing, and racing on tracks at higher altitude gives you slightly slower times than what you would get at a track at sea level. The next is ambient temperature or air temperature. So basically, bikes run the best at a cool temperature. You know, that is why whenever if you have picked up any motorcycle magazine or automotive magazine, the test figures that they give you into, let it be BHP, let it be 0 to 100, or any statistic they give you, is all at standard air temperature and pressure. So that means the engine is going to be optimal at the standard temperature, which should be around 24 to 26 degrees. But obviously that is not in anybody's control, because it is the environment. So different tracks, different places, like Chennai is very hot, and probably Bangalore has better weather than Chennai, and probably Delhi has better weather. So basically different racetracks have different ambient temperatures. So the motorcycle is performing, whether you like it or not, different. It's giving you different performance at different tracks based on the air temperature. So basically, lower the air temperature, better the performance of the motorcycle. And next is, I would be moving to humidity. Humidity is nothing but the amount of water vapor in the air, which is of the definition. So more water in the air, water doesn't burn. So when there's more water in the air and it enters the motorcycle, it's not getting combusted. So basically, it's a waste of air entering, and it doesn't join with the fuel and combust when the spark plug is ignited. So humidity, the higher the humidity, slower the bike is going to go. And so lesser the humidity, you're making more power. So obviously the optimal conditions is lower humidity. But obviously, like you cannot control the environment. It is all nature. It is something that is not in our control. But we can change the tunes of the bike, which I will be getting into later. But humidity does affect the bike negatively. And next is something that would impact from the environment, is wind. And generally, if you have wind which is coming head on, it's going to hamper your performance, because you are trying to cut into the air and try to make the fastest possible time. So if you have headwind, it's slowing you down a tad bit. And similarly, if you have crosswind, the bike is being pushed off its stable line, and you are correcting the bike. So you're losing a bit of a time. But then again, if the wind is from the back, tailwind, it doesn't assist you that much, because you're obviously doing speeds of over 100 kilometers per hour, and the wind is barely 8-10 kilometers per hour. It's not going to assist you that much as to what headwind and crosswind is going to oppose you. And so when developing a game, obviously different tracks, different places have different conditions, different all over, all the environment conditions cannot be controlled. So it's all different. So you can change it. And when if I mean, if you, Vineet, have played any motorcycle or F Formula One racing game on a PlayStation, they give you the track conditions when you're just starting the game. They say temperature is normal or high or 32 degrees, and the wind is high, headwind, crosswind, all of that. So the game can include all of that, and also educate people along the way. For people who are playing the game for the first time, probably you can give tips that headwind hampers the performance, high humidity reduces the horsepower. So you can be informative as well, when including the environmental factors into the game.
Super. I had no idea that environment matters so much. And because the environment is same for both the racers, it actually then again comes back to the racer, how he or she adapts to the environment and makes the best use of that, right? So perfect. I think from here we move to the last part, which is the most important, probably at least to the best of my knowledge, you can correct, which is the machine. There are some questions from the audience also, which is on the same lines, and I'll kind of read it out. So there's one question which says, which bike is best for drag racing? There's another question that says, how much is race affected by tires, suspension, and things like that. Then there is a question which also says that how do you control the bike in the run? What is the best? So along with these three questions, I'm sure in your answer regarding the machine, importance of machine, you will cover this all these questions. So over to you, Hemanth.
Yeah, so obviously machine matters a lot, like I said. And the number one aspect, what I think is the most important in a bike is the power, because drag racing, like I said, is the shortest form of motorsport. So power is something that is very, very important. And the Extreme 160R is very powerful because it is the fastest accelerating bike. And since you have only 400 meters to cover, you need something that shoots off the line very fast. So something that is very fast accelerating. Also, you need a bike which has the right amount of high horsepower to take you down the line, to take you down the racetrack with the highest power, and giving you the highest chance of obtaining the highest possible speed. And so definitely horsepower is something that is a very important statistic on any motorcycle that you are going to use for drag racing. And next is obviously lighter is faster. We all know that, and that is why even though I love fitness, and going to the gym, I always have to stay light as possible, like around 74, 75 kilos for my height, because weight is something that is so important. And that is why nowadays you see most motorcycle brands going into using reducing the weight of the machine, in terms of either using, like Hero have used, like the Extreme 160R has lightweight alloy wheels. uh, you're always trying to reduce the weight on a motorcycle and give it the perfect balance. So when probably making a game, you are definitely going to have obviously lightweight packages or stage wise, because weight is something that is very important in drag racing, since it is such a short format. And so obviously even with power, when building a game, you can probably have like a stage one motorcycle has this much bhp, but then you take it to the tuner shop and you can reflash the ECU and probably do things which I'll come to in the next conversation. But then definitely you want a bike which is well balanced. And for that, the suspension is something that is very important, because when you are taking off the line and giving accelerator and putting the power down on the wheel is something that is very important. And the suspension plays a very important role in delivering the power from the engine to the rear wheel. So if you have a too hard suspension, then the the wheel is just going to spin, because the power is not getting delivered onto the wheel. But then if you have a suspension which you can adjust according to your weight and your riding style, you will be able to make sure the suspension gets engaged, and the bike sits on the rear wheel and puts the power onto the rear wheel, which is delivered onto the road. So you are going faster. So definitely uh, that is something what is very important, the balance of the bike, which comes with the suspension. And already the Hero Extreme 160R has a adjustable suspension. But if a game maker would want to add this feature into the game, you can give them various modes of adjustable suspension, like hard, medium, soft. And definitely suspension upgrade packages, they can keep adding on those things. And then there are other modifications that you can make with the motorcycle, is like adding an air filter. So adding an air filter, a high flow air filter, allows more air from the atmosphere to enter the motorcycle. So along with a ECU remap, where you tell the bike to add more fuel as well, because you are allowing more air to come in, you can make probably a package with a with a ECU remap, fuel correction with an air filter, because you're adding more air, you can add more fuel, which in turn you'll get more power. Because when you are racing motorcycles or drag racing, you're not looking for efficiency, or you're not looking for how much mileage is the motorcycle giving you, nor are you looking for to prolong the engine life. So basically, motorcycle manufacturers, they 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 curtail a lot of parameters to give the engine life, to give the motorcycle life, to give it good fuel economy. But then when you are racing, all these things don't matter. You're coming there to do the fastest possible time. So game makers can definitely you know add so many things to a motorcycle to keep making it faster. And probably along, when making the game, uh, it can happen stage by stage. And definitely there are many other more things which tires tires is something that plays a very important role, because that is the only point of contact between your motorcycle and the road. So when you are racing, you need tires which are soft, which is a soft compound, which is giving you maximum traction, which is nothing but maximum grip. So you can have tire upgrades. So when starting off the game or starting off, you can run with a normal tire. But then as you the game maker can give a tire upgrade option, like slicks. Basically, racing slicks give you the best performance on a track. So it helps you, like I said, put the power down faster, so you go faster. So tires is something that you can add in your list of modifications or list of add-ons that um, you can add to the game. And then there are also smaller things like engine oil. Basically, motorcycles run engine oil which don't have too much of viscosity, because you don't want too much of viscosity. So in every stage of basic bike maintenance, there are special drag racing or special racing variants of it, like racing tire, racing oil, racing air filter, racing ECU, racing aerodynamic package, where you are removing the headlights, removing the tail lights, adding lightweight bodywork, carbon fiber bodywork. So in every single detail of a bike, there are things what you can do to improve for racing. So all this can be included into the game. And also, drag racing bikes generally like to extend the rear wheel. Basically, it's an extended swing arm. So basically, you're lengthening the wheelbase of the bike to reduce the center of gravity, to prevent a wheelie. Like you said, you had a wheelie in when trying the bike one of in the test track. Probably if the bike had an elongated swing arm at the back, increasing the wheelbase reduces the chance of the bike popping up at the start. So that is why if you see drag machines have elongated swing arms at the back. And then you can to go if you want to go into more detail. Drag racing bikes use chains which are lightweight. So basically, like I said, lighter is faster. So including the chain is lightweight. So they use a thinner chain when they are drag racing. Then you can have lightweight sprockets, and you can have a foot peg removal kit, because motorcycles come with rear passenger foot peg. So all of that can be removed in your weight removal package. So there are many things you can do to a motorcycle when doing game development like a video game, because we do these things in the real world when we are racing.
Super, Hemant. You've also given clues to all the participants that how can they make this XDrags game more engaging, more competing, and great for the gamers who would want to play this. Now, why you are the perfect person for this webinar, Hemant, is you are not only this drag racing champion, but you are also a gamer. So you understand, in actual world versus the gaming world, what will be the difference and what can be the common threads. When on machine at the drag racing track, you make use of both hands, legs, everything. But while you're playing, you just have, probably two fingers controlling the game. So which all controls, according to you, are important in the drag racing game, which the developer should give?
Okay, so uh, if you are making this a vast and elaborate game and not just a quick playing game, my suggestion would be that you will have different modes. So for gamers, you know that every game has something called a easy mode, novice and amateur and professional. So if you were doing a an amateur mode, you could probably just give an accelerator. That's it. And but that would be like riding or driving an automatic bike. So that could be the most basic and simplest, easiest to just understand how the lights work and all of that. And then probably if he goes to the intermediate stage, you can have him at one hand is obviously the accelerator, and the other hand is the clutch release. Um, and then once you've released the clutch and your accelerator is on, gear change is something that is also very important in racing. Probably you can have that as well if you're in the intermediate mode, or probably in the advanced mode. And yeah, you don't have more fingers than that to use, and nor in a motorcycle it is just accelerator and clutch and gear with your leg. So these are three things that could be included probably in the hard mode. Probably game developers would know how they could include a gear change. Probably it's just a tap on the screen or something. But that is what that these are the things I would include if I'm playing a game. But don't make it straight up hard with too many things confusing. Probably, like I said, an amateur mode, an intermediate mode, and an advanced mode would probably help. Yeah, this was what I would suggest for just the game controls.
Super. And there's a question from audience that which bike is better for drag racing? Is it naked bikes or the sports bike?
So definitely you want an aerodynamic efficient bike, like I said the other time. So sports bikes, naked bikes don't have aerodynamic packages. So basically, it is not a big difference, but drag racing is the shortest form of motorsport, and you're fighting in the thousandths or hundredths of a second, so milliseconds. So that does make a difference. Probably your aerodynamic body kit, which are there on the sport bikes, are going to help you cut faster through the air. So it's going to make like probably a tenth or two tenth, which is a very big difference in racing.
Right. And there is another question from the audience again that uh, I'll also clarify. Sorry, before that question, I'll also clarify because we wanted the participants to develop the game around Extreme 160R, and Extreme 160R is a naked bike right now. So there, if they were to give an option of, let's say, like you were saying, upgrading the bike, one option is you add the fairing also onto the bike so that it can become, the sports bike. That is possible. That can be given, right? That will improve the
No,
aerodynamics.
so the question I understood was which bike is better of the two, but then if you're using the Extreme 160R as a platform, then you don't want to add more weight to it by adding fairing, right?
Yeah.
So I just gave you my preference of the two bikes as a general question, but then as a game is based around the Extreme 160R, obviously you don't want to add weight to it by adding a fairing to it.
Okay. So I think that answers, because I was wondering that if that can be one of the upgrade option to improve the aerodynamics, but on the worst side, it adds the weight to the bike, so that kind of worsens the performance. Perfect. So that is good. There's another question from the audience. Do the drag races happen at night or it's only the daytime?
No, definitely world over it happens in the night under the floodlights because the temperature is cooler and the whole atmosphere is also, the humidity is less. And, any form of motorsporting includes a lot of glitz and glamour. It's not, it has a lot of crowd, lot of entertainment as well. And nighttime is better also that way. And I'm also waiting for a night drag to happen in India. But all over the world, it happens at the nights also. And main benefit being lower temperatures and lower humidity.
Perfect. And another question again from audience that if it rains, what happens? The race stops?
Yeah, drag racing stops.
Drag racing stops. Okay, so
Yeah,
rain cannot happen.
rain cannot happen.
There's also a question somebody is interested in, I think, cheerleaders. So are there cheerleaders around the track?
Definitely, any form of motorsport has a lot of glitz and glamour, a lot of umbrella girls, a lot of cheerleading, a lot of music, a lot of events happening around the track. So that's why motorsport is so glamorous, and you have cheerleaders for sure.
Right. And now I left two more questions. I think these are the last two questions. There is a question ballpark percentage for each and every element as to improve the performance, like weight reduction. But I think that will be too detailed. That can be towards the later part of once, there's a concept around the game development and you're fine tuning it, then you can put the percentages of performance because it will be too detailed otherwise, right? At this stage.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I think so too. But like you said, we'll cover all the basic points of the game, and then, like you said, fine tune it, and at the later stage, add it or remove it.
Perfect. And last, I think this is the jackpot question. What is your track record?
I just set it at the Valley Run last week. It was 9.508 seconds.
Wow. And that's for a quarter mile.
That's for a quarter mile.
Superb. And and you broke your own record, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes, yes.
That was what before this?
That was the previous 9.677.
Wow. So we're actually talking now fractions of seconds.
Yeah, like I said, the sport is all fractions and million, thousands of a second.
Right. I just saw there was one more pop up. Right. So, and I think the question answer is over. I would just want to ask one quick because you have experienced drag racing. Of course, you do it on bigger motorcycles. You have experienced it on the Extreme 160R also. How has been your experience on the Extreme 160R?
So yeah, definitely the Extreme 160R is a pocket rocket. It is very fast off the line. It was a great experience riding it at the Valley Run at the XDrags. So it takes off very fast off the line because in its segment it's the fastest accelerating bike, which is 0 to 60 in 4.7 seconds. So that is something, like I said, I love fast accelerating bikes because that's what gets you off the line very fast. And it is also a very light and easy to handle bike. And they have it has lightened alloy wheels, and overall it's a very light bike, easy to handle. It has an adjustable suspension, which I set up the suspension to my liking, so I was able to put the maximum power to the rear wheel. And obviously it wasn't my first time riding the bike. I had ridden it at the CIT when that was my first ride of the bike, so I was pretty familiar with the bike. So I knew exactly where I could, at what RPM I could launch the bike to get the most power onto the rear wheel, since we were racing quarter mile. And so overall, the bike was very fast, and we did a good timing, and it was able, the bike also with my skill, I was it helped me to win all my races on the Extreme 160R at the Valley Run.
Yep, absolutely. This audience doesn't want to leave you, by the way. So there's one more question that has come. Uh, uh, so they want more understanding on the championship, how the winner is selected, and let me answer because you did mention it in the first brief of drag racing, and correct me if I go wrong. So what you said, for example, if there are 10 participants, 10 drag racers, so what happens is in the pair they will go to one against each other, and
Random.
at the random, of course, and at the end of once all the 10 have raced, the shortest time to cover the quarter mile person wins the race, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So, like I said, if there are 10 participants, your race is against the clock. Who clocks the fastest? And it is in ascending order. So, the least time taken to cover quarter mile wins.
And so right, yeah, okay, so perfect. And how many rounds are there? Sorry, this I may have missed. You may have covered this point. How many rounds are there? How many runs are there per racer?
So, you're given one practice or two practices, and then you have your final. So that is why I said it's the shortest form of motorsport, which may cover just between 9 and 15 seconds, depending on the machine or the displacement, engine displacement bike you're riding. So that's it. You're given one. But then, obviously, if you are going for a track day or a paid session, you can go how many ever times you want. So that is why, to make the game more interesting, you can have modes like quick race. Quick race is nothing but just one race, no practice, and then probably you can have a career mode. So he can go up the ranks and race in different parts of India, or in the championship mode, where he has many tracks to race at, and you accumulate points for first place, second place at each track. And then probably you can have a multiplayer mode, where if you get bored of racing against the computer or clocking a time, you can probably I can connect with you over the internet, and I can be racing against you. And or you can probably have a hero leaderboard, where you go up against other riders who have enrolled in the game. Or you can have or you can just, like I said, you can have a quick race, or you can have a career mode. It depends on how much you want to play and how much time you have at the moment.
Super. I think this brings us to the end of Q&A session. And Hemant, thank you so much. And thank you very much, because I personally learned a lot. And every time I interact with you, I think this is my 7th or 8th interaction with you. And every time I have learned something or the new. But today's call was, I think, the most enlightening one, at least for me. And I'm sure it would be for the audience as well. So thank you again, Hemant. It was such a pleasure to have you with us.
Likewise, it's an honor to help all of you all and at least educate you from the little knowledge that I have.
Great. Over to you, Dhruv.
Thank you, Vineet, and thank you, Champion, for sparing your time and joining us in the webinar. Now we have reached that part of the day where we have to say bye. Boys and girls, really thrilled to have you all, and thank you for being part of this. I really hope everyone watching the legend speak about drag racing would have got something out of this webinar today. Once again, thank you and have a great evening ahead. Thank you.